We're going to talk about kind of an interesting topic called 3D foods, 3D printed foods. Okay. I think this is going to become very relevant in the near future. Uh, it's going to become something that we're going to see more and more often. Right now, these things, is it the next, is it going to be viable to eat this kind of food? So stay tuned and let's explore what this is all about. Okay. Now, people thought that 3D printed foods are something very new. No, they've actually been around for quite some time. And they started off by making these pizzas. You go to a machine and you kind of just punch in a few things and you'll get, kind of a pizza that comes out of a machine. Okay. It's a very simplistic one that they made because a lot of the food bases were already made and it would put all the toppings on it just by, just falling onto the pizza. Very scientifically, of course, done, and it would bake in that, and then you just get it, just pop out of the machine, and there you are, voila, you have your pizza. Okay, but it was not really a 3D printed food. It was kind of, let's say, an automated food. But the concept of having automated food, automatically made and served for you, started long time ago. Now, food that is printed in this 3D manner uses the same way that you normally 3D print any other object. Okay, they use these filaments. Okay, so they make filaments out of food and they're essentially raw food. Okay, and they'll be in the semi-solid pasty kind of format, which is viable for it to be pressed through. You can't have an absolute solid thing and try to 3D print it, won't work out. So if you're familiar with how 3D prints work, it goes layer by layer. You can have a very thin substrate. So in a two-dimensional level, it prints out whatever shape you want, and it keeps going higher and higher and higher until you get a kind of a 3D block. So it's the same thing happens here, but it happens with food. Okay. Now, if you do, you won't find them everywhere. You'll find them in very fine dining places, gourmet dining. There are few people who actually make these kinds of 3D printed foods. But the problem is, it can take about 45 minutes just to make a small piece of, let's say, 6 layers of cake. Cake, icing, and something on the top can take up to 45 minutes. So it's a little time consuming. And that's why you'll find them in, very, exquisite places where you don't have to serve so much of it. They may make about 5 or 6 pieces of them and keep them ready. So that's where we are at the moment. But it's improving every day. Okay, there's something new coming up every moment. They're able to actually now make steaks. Okay, no, that's amazing. So they take the animal cell and they actually breed one part of that meat, and they actually make a steak, and they've even been able to culture fish as well. Okay, vegetable kind of cooking materials has already been available. A lot of them are available, and they make it into paste. Now, I'll give you an example, a very crude example of a 3D sort of 3D printed food is spaghetti. Okay, that's kind of pressed through, but it's a very simple process, but it is kind of manufactured through a machine, right? So what are the benefits? What are the potential benefits of 3D printed food? Okay, now this can be very useful in hospitals when the nutrition has to be exactly measured in terms of what all nutrients are required by that patient for that particular meal. So they can highly customize that meal and get it up to the right proportions, so many percentage of, or so many mg of calcium and so many mg of this sulfur, phosphorus, whatever it is. They can actually build all those nutrients into the food itself. So you might see it actually becoming a big kick in the future of hospitals. Not only that, it's good for making simple food. You can make it look fantastic. You can give it a nice whole shape. And some foods, they may not be very palatable. You may not like to eat it, but when it's presented better, you tend to be able to eat it. Sometimes, and it's very good for kids and all that who make a lot of fuss sometimes eating food. And probably when it has a nice shape and texture, they're invited to eat it. So it makes simple food look much better. Now, the other thing is recipe sharing. Now, since all of this is mechanically processed, all you do is, hey, give me the recipe for that, that lovely sandwich or the cake you made. All they do is send you a file. right? They'll send you a 3D print file and you just upload it into your machine and boom, there you got your own food. So there's good potential. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can actually just share by just say, so everything gets done electronically and life's great. Okay. Another benefit is which is actually going to come up, and I think there will be a lot of money put into it, is for space travel. So when you're going to send delegations to Mars, which takes very long journeys, instead of having that very, kind of pasty kind of food, they'll actually carry a kind of a 3D printing machine so that they can probably have something that looks like a real meal, you know. And since most of the components will all be stored in semi-solid paste form, they can do a lot. They can store a lot of it, and they can make a variety of dishes from it. Okay. Now, of course, like everyone does say, there are some cons. Okay, not everything is as good as it's good to be true, but there are some things that you have to consider. One is it definitely takes a lot of time to make. Okay, it takes time to prepare. You've got to get the raw material, and you've got to know what the recipe is. If you happen to get it from somebody else, it's fine. But then you have to you have to put certain amount of water in some of the foods or some of the raw material, because depending on what you need to do, so there is a little time to takes time to prepare. So time is a big con over here. Now, of course, taste. Now it really may not taste like the real thing. Okay. The variations are going to be probably taste a bit synthetic. Now, natural foods have different flavors in different parts of the food. Okay, that's the thing about natural food. It'll taste different. If you take a vegetable, the corners will taste different than the middle, and so there'll be a kind of an array of flavor in natural food. This may not really happen in 3D printed food. You're going to get an even taste throughout. Okay, because the substrate is homogeneous. You can probably fake it by putting different layers and try to enhance the taste, but it's definitely not going to be like the real thing. There is, of course, at this point, it's not a cheap piece of equipment. It's costly. Okay. And there is a certain amount of training you require for that. So that how do you use it? How do you maintain it? How do you feed the raw materials into it? What happens if it gets jammed? Whole lot of things. So there's a lot of training there. And of course, the material that you get may not be consistent. Okay. It might vary. I mean, this even happens with salt. Okay. Sometimes salt is not as salty as, one day's salt you buy from the shop, and the next day it's not really that salty. And same thing can happen for, chilies as well. Some will be very pungent and spicy, and some will be just okay. So the same thing is going to happen to your raw material. The consistency may not be, all the way there. Okay. Now, cleaning is something that is the biggest hurdle for this industry right now. Because if any food is left behind in any part of the machine, it's going to breed bacteria. Now, this is something that they have to really overcome. They can't use certain materials. A lot of plastic materials are used in current, 3D printers. And this doesn't go well with bacteria. They actually breed a lot of bacteria. And if you want to clean these parts, they may not really withstand the temperatures of, let's say, a dishwasher. We'll have to use very warm solutions, and those warm solutions may not really be effective. And if it's too hot, it may damage the part, and that will add to another crack in the material where bacteria may breed again. Okay, that's so sometimes you might have just throw some parts away. Okay, now the food that comes out of a 3D printed machine is not cooked. It'll only give you the form, and it'll give you some kind of texture. But at the end of the day, you still have to cook it. Now, that could be by baking, microwaving, or steaming it somehow. Okay, so there's additional work to get that. Okay. So in 3D printed foods, what is safe now? Okay, what is safe now? Now, at this point, what is really safe now is chocolates. Okay. And icing on cakes, and yeah, like icing. Typically, what they do, they actually bake the cake, and then they put one of these machines to do the layers of icing. So right now, this is the only thing that's kind of safe, because chocolate by itself it's got a resistance to bacteria anyway. And if if you put something like a wheat or a vegetable, those will break down a lot faster. So as of now, that's the only thing that's probably become very safe now. And you've got a lot of machines that will do do the layering of, and you can build, as you can see in the photograph here, you see it was beautiful looking, items can be made with 3D prints. So it's something that will start coming up. But there'll definitely going to be new FDA standards for this. Okay. What are the materials that can be used? What should the nozzle be made out of? How do you protect the filament? What is the refrigeration? Does it need to be refrigerated? What parts cannot be washed and must be recycled and thrown and put again? So they'll have to come up with a lot of standards. Right now, it's a kind of a very open, loose market. Everyone is doing their own thing. But I think shortly, when this becomes a little more, substantial, and they start to see that these things are not being custom built and they're kind of getting out into the commercial market as products being sold, then they will definitely have to put down some standards for it. And I think these standards are getting defined as, each day as the technology improves. But there's definitely going to be a lot of talk about whether these parts are biodegradable themselves, because it's an oxymoron. You need something that can resist bacteria, but at the same time, when they discard the part, it shouldn't cause pollution. So there's going to be kind of a bit of tug of war here happening as to what can they actually use for materials. Okay, but what is the immediate trend? What's going to happen right now? Okay, definitely lab cultured meats are hitting the market. Okay, you've got fish and even certain mashed vegetables are hitting the market now. Okay, and while it may not be coming out of a machine, 3D printed machine in your house, you might just get it packed as frozen food, and then you just put it on the pan and you have it ready. And I think steaks and fish are really now already becoming popular, and you've got a food that tastes like meat but is actually a veg. So vegan meat, as they call it, is also becoming very, very popular, and they're all cultured. Okay, they make them out of cell cultures, and they put them through an incubation process, and the cells actually grow. And you can get a steak, or you can get a fish fillet. I don't know about mashed potato, but probably that might be the easiest thing to make. And you just put it in your regular pot and pan and use it. So I think uh, this will beat having the regular processed food that you get, like your 2-minute noodles, and it'll be far more nutritious than that and far safer than that. I agree. But of course, with every product that is kind of laboratory manufactured is going to lack one thing, and it's going to lack the phytonutrients. The phytonutrients are those trace elements that you typically find in all natural foods. Rare earth metals, molybdenum, selenium. Maybe they'll get wise. Maybe they'll start actually adding these minerals into the food itself. So, if there is a demand for it, and people start saying, no, I want this, there has to be phytonutrients in it, then probably the industry will be forced to actually plug in those materials. So, I mean, it's an open world out there. There's plenty of videos that you can see on YouTube and a lot of other channels. And there are actually companies that have websites about, what actually is 3D printed food and what are the developments with that. And it's a kind of a different future altogether. But I definitely think it's going to make impacts in hospitals, and in space travel is going to be probably the most immediate markets for this kind of food. And who knows, maybe one day, like you have a mixer or a toaster, you're going to have a 3D print food machine on your kitchen counter. It might happen in the next 10 years, who knows. But it's a question of how healthy and how viable and how economical it's going to be before it actually hits your table. So thanks. I open the floor for any questions or anything you'd like to talk about.